Okay, I'm going to call to order the February 25th Town Council meeting. Everybody can stand for the pledge.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, welcome everyone. We have no proclamations or presentations tonight. Public petition. It's going to be a long night. Have a head cold. Public petitions, communications, and public participation on any subject within the jurisdiction of the town council. 2 minutes.
Mike Bynum, 70 Woodfield Drive. I know you guys got a lot of questions from us regarding the parcel, so I just want to summarize tonight, a couple minutes, our concerns of the process related to the sale of the move across town property. First, our concern of actions between the town manager, Mr. Williams, between June and August 2019. The letter of intent to sell, pre-site development, zoning change, and the purchase and sale agreement of $1 for 9.7 acres of land. Where there's no notification to abutters, no bids were sought, no appraisal of land, or public hearing for that sale. Number two, prior town council trying to keep this process secretive. Now I say this tough, I don't want to be talking about this, but the purchase and sale agreement had a clause in it, section 9E, confidentiality. Buyer and seller agree to keep the financial terms, environmental testing results, and performance contingencies of this agreement confidential, disclosing the same only to their lawyers, accountants, and business advisors. And this is the prior town council. Number three, the sale of $1 for 10 acres of land seems to defraud the state of fair land value as agreed in the special act and quitclaim deed. Number four, we do not believe that the special act 3.19 or 11.16 override the town charter commitments of notifying abutters or going to public referendum for land value greater than 1% of budget, above $570,000, as suggested by Attorney Condon, who is the same attorney who worked with the prior town council to get us to this position. And us, I mean our town council, the neighbors, and Mr. Williams, all are now in this box. I'm hoping we got a neutral legal opinion to our questions for this evening's discussion. And just to be clear, I'm supportive of economic development. I pay high taxes like everyone else in town, and I support Mr. Williams' right to develop on his property. But I do not support actions by our town and developers to take unjustified risk or go around or against the rules which are in place to provide transparency and protect our town's valuable assets of people, property, and environment. Thank you.
Good evening. Perfectly challenged.
I totally feel you.
Good evening, Council. My name is Matt Sexton. I live at 75 Woodfield Drive, Tolland. Thank you for the opportunity to let us speak tonight. We as a community have tremendous fears and concerns with the potential sale of the Roebuck Cross parcel to Mr. Stephen Williams. We have heard firsthand from citizens of Tolland who live right beside the property that Mr. Williams developed off Puff Cap. Apparently, it wasn't what was expected. We also fear that this, like it passed around, 3 pages, please look at all. That right there that you're going to be seeing could be our reality as well. This is yet another parcel of land that Mr. Williams owns off of Angelo Drive. He started the site grade and for whatever reason, never finished. It is now an eyesore that contains nothing but fill for other projects. Please notice the 4 residential homes surrounding this fill site. There's really nothing else there, so I don't know what to call it. As Mike had said, I am also in favor of economic development in Tolland, but do we really need another vacant storefront or an empty field? If this sale was to go through, not requiring construction bond to protect the town and the neighborhood, will leave us in a very bad position. The sale does not need to happen. This is not the direction that Tolland needs. These are my neighbors, these are my friends, and these are my family. And they're some of the greatest people I've ever gotten the privilege to get to know. Tonight we ask you not to sell the Roebuck Cross parcel. We are asking you to support and protect the interests of the citizens of Tolland. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name is Joel Johnson, 52 Woodfields Drive. I appreciate you allowing us to share tonight, and I really appreciate the spot you're in. I feel for you because you are left with a mess that was created by the previous town council. This is not the town council that was there before. Mr. Rosen, with the exception of him, I think, starting his job 2 days before he signed the document, was not the person that was here when this situation started. But you have the opportunity tonight to right a wrong. And when I mean it wrong, I really mean it wrong. We're in the privileged position, I guess, to be able to have the legal resources to fight this just as well as Mr. Williams does. And so this is an issue. This is an issue for the town that ultimately the citizens of the town will pay for one way or the other. But again, you have the opportunity to right or wrong. We're asking you to deny this sale, to stop this sale, and allow the neighbors, the abutters, the town council, Mr. Williams, to come together and come up with something that's acceptable to all, which I believe, because I am also pro-development, that we can do. But to sell a parcel of land, a 9-acre parcel of land, for $1, nobody from outside, unless they're a lawyer, because I'm not talking about necessarily law, I'm not a lawyer, but just on its face, how does that make sense? 9 acres for $1, with all the meetings happening behind the scenes, emails that say let's meet in private, situations that just on their face do not make any sense. So I'm asking you to not sell citizens' land for $1 and allow us to reset this and start over. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Public hearing items, we have none. Reports and committees responsible to the council. I don't think anybody is here. Nope, I think we're good. Reports of town council liaisons. You are ready. That was ready. Snatch and grab.
Exactly. I hope I get everything. Unfortunately, last night I didn't go to planning and zoning because we had a joint town council board of ed meeting. I'm going to refer everyone to the notes. It is the first meeting that we had Dr. Don come in and talk to planning and zoning about some of the changes that they want to make to their regulations. So he's going to be meeting with them the second meeting of every month for a few months. So those are going to be very good notes. Land acquisition did meet. We met in executive session. There will be a report coming out in the next few months with what the findings were in that meeting. Census, I'm going to tag team with my co-chair over here. First, I want to let you all know, please mark on your calendars that March 14th is when the census is coming out. You're going to receive an invitation between the 14th and the 20th to participate. We have very good reasons for you to participate. Mike has very good reasons for you to participate. Please be aware of that date. And tourism, we'll go back to census in a minute, but tourism commission, we had a meeting last week. We now have Tolland brochures in the town of Middletown at the Middlesex Chamber offices. They have a front room that's just dedicated to tourism. So, and they have people stopping in there all the time from out of state and in the area looking for places to go. So there's a brochure about our open spaces that are available in Tolland for them to walk. There's a brochure about the arts of Tolland and another one about all of our museums from the Historical Society. So I'm very excited about that. If anybody else has a tourism attraction here in Tolland that they have brochures for, I'm more than happy to take them down there and place them in there for you. There's going to be lots of other opportunities for us to help advertise for free, well, besides the cost of the brochure, all of the benefits that we enjoy in Tolland. Now to bring it over to my co-chair over here to talk about the benefits of responding early.
Sure, it's sort of a early town manager's report, I guess. The only thing I'll just say is earlier today I was in a meeting with a couple of other town managers, and one of them from Coventry accepted a friendly wager that we said that Tolland would complete a higher percentage of the census responses by March 23rd than Coventry. And what we're wagering is a gift certificate to a local restaurant from Tolland versus a gift certificate from a local restaurant in Coventry. So we're hoping to get the surveys back. We don't have a certain percentage we're shooting for, but it's a percentage of those postcards that have a census ID on them based on what the Census Bureau will be sending out to the households between March 12th and March 20th.
That's it.
March 17th is when the
Peace.
permanent committee meets, permanent celebration committee meets, and hopefully I'll be there.
So the Conservation Commission, I was unable to attend because we had a budget capital public hearing. However, just to go over some of the notes, they did raise $100 from their full moon hike on the 8th, which I attended with Lisa and several other residents. So that was a really great event. They did select the design for the wanted property. It was the Vision of Elders Park. So if you visit the planning and development page,
Which one was that?
that is the one by Allison Costello. So it's on
I think
page.
I liked
So that's page, I believe, 8 of the presentations from all the students. Otherwise, there was an incident on Shaffron where a dog did bite a hiker. So just a PSA, leash your dogs when you're hiking. You know, no matter how good a recall they have, you never know when they might just bolt. So that would be my only other thing. And that is it. I believe next Water Commission meeting, we have a joint meeting with Town Council FOI meeting. So I believe I'll delete that as well as the next Conservation Commission meeting.
I had a Board of Ed meeting in which they finalized their budget, which we're all aware of because we had the joint meeting last night. And Eastern Highlands Health District was canceled due to quorum issues, so I did not have that. That's all I had.
WPCA did meet last week. I was unable to attend, so I'll have to refer you to the minutes on that one.
For Birch Grove Building Committee, that as I stated last time, that the state and the town and the contractors had arrived at a finalized budget where the budget has been guaranteed, at least at this point, not to exceed $46 million, which means that it will stay on budget. That we are now in phase 3 of the planning, that the information was just sent out last week as far as the plans and construction plans to be finalized by the committee and by the state, but it's proceeding forward.
All right, the only meeting I had was land acquisition as well, executive session, so nothing to report.
Okey dokey. Gets us to new business. 8.1, consideration and action on approving the revised public services reference library job description.
So the Tolland Library had a vacancy open up in early March of the incumbent reference librarian. Generally, when people of long-standing in position leave the town, we have an opportunity to look at the job description to see if we want to make any tweaks or tune-ups to it. I believe through the good work of Mike Wilkinson, our Director of Administrative Services, we have some revisions for you tonight that are redlined in the proposed document on pages 4 through 9 of your packet. So if you have any questions about what changed, we're happy to speak a little bit about that. But this is routine. We usually look at the job descriptions when somebody leaves.
Does anybody have any questions? No? That looks good.
Yep.
Pretty basic.
I would just want to thank Mary Ann Ainsworth for about 30 years of service to the town and the town library. So I believe in March, March 5th from 2 to 4, they're having her an open house to thank her for her decades of service. So if you have time to stop by between 2 and 4 on Thursday, March 5th, they'll be having a little celebration and retirement going party.
Thank you for pointing that out. I didn't know that.
Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to approve or adopt the revised public services reference library job description.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion carries. All right, 8-2, the appointment of Bloom Shapiro as the town's independent auditor for the next 5-year fiscal year ending June 30th, 2020 through 2024.
That's right. So, councilors, you'll remember a few weeks ago, Bloom Shapiro was in here, the representative presenting the CAFR and the audit report for the previous fiscal year. We were working at that time on looking at soliciting quotes from other firms that also offer these services besides Bloom Shapiro. Our finance director was able to solicit, I believe, three quotes. And Bloom Shapiro was not only the lowest quote, but their quote also held stable for 5 fiscal years at a flat fee of $54,900. And we've also used this firm many, many times before, so they have a good track record with Tolland. We see no reason why we shouldn't proceed with them for the next 5 fiscal years, but that is your decision. So we'd like to ask you for your support in that.
And this was floated by the Board of Ed also?
So the Board of Ed is responsible for 50% of the cost, and the superintendent, and I believe, I'm not sure who else.
Mark.
Oh, Mark, yes,
Well.
the business manager. They've looked this over and they agree Bloom Shapiro is the proper vendor for this service.
Excuse me, Mike, do they have to vote on that, or is that?
I don't believe they have in the past. I think that's so. Yeah, my understanding. I'm looking over there.
No, I just wanted to know if they had, they had to say yes before we said yes. Like,
Right.
So if they said no.
It's one joint report,
Yeah.
and so town and schools work together on it. And it's council's decision to enter into the contract, but the superintendent is agreeing with it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate that clarification.
Sure.
Otherwise, I entertain a motion to appoint Bloom Shapiro as the town's independent auditor for the next 5 fiscal years and June 30th, 2020 through 2024.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Okay, I'm sorry. Agenda item 8.3, discussion exploring the creation of a remote participation policy.
Okay, so there's no materials for this tonight in your packets. So if anybody's watching at home or in the audience, there's nothing in the packets this thing. The reason this is being broached at this time, I've been here almost 6 months, and council's been here a few months now, and we've already had at least 1 or 2 instances where the request has come in, can a counselor participate in a meeting via phone, teleconference? We've had an instance where that's happened at least once so far. FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, allows any municipal body to engage in remote participation, so long as that body at the beginning of the meeting takes a vote to allow it. And I believe it has to be a unanimous vote. I'm not 100%, I should have asked the town clerk that. But what this policy would do, should the council desire to create one, would be to have a blanket policy that covers all the town's boards, agencies, and commissions. Should they wish to engage in remote participation in a meeting, and sets out some guidelines and some best practices about how to do that. So FOIA is silent on best practices, on what should use a telephone, what else possibly use, like Skype, for example, things like that. It's silent on many things. We can get into some more specifics. So I don't have any sample policies for you tonight, but what I can share is that I have created this exact sort of policy in the previous community I've worked for. I have that policy with me. A lot of it doesn't pertain because it was in a different state, but some of it does pertain. So I'd like to sort of lay out some of the ideas that came up in that policy to see if council would like to at the next meeting, throw together a draft policy, maybe encompassing some of these. Some of these are for debate, so discussion. So in this other community I work for, started off with a purpose statement of what the remote participation policy is. In this case, it would be FOIA allows members of public bodies with consent and vote of the body to participate remotely in meetings. While all members of town boards and committees should try to attend meetings in person, the new regulations seek to promote greater participation in government meetings by allowing members to participate remotely when certain specific circumstances prevent them from being physically present. The intent of this policy is to establish clear guidelines on the practice of remote participation by town boards and committees. So again, FOIA doesn't say specifically what circumstances you can and cannot allow remote participation. It's really up to the board and committee that evening whether they want to allow it. So a municipality may adopt a policy that memorializes the use of remote participation by public bodies within its jurisdiction. This policy shall apply to all town boards, committees, commissions, subcommittees, and working groups, regardless of whether such town boards are appointed or elected. Now, as a discussion point, we may want to talk about, should we give ability to various committees to opt out of the remote participation policy? And so should a board decide they do not want to engage with this, wants to have the discretion to opt out, it may elect to not make remote participation at meetings an option for its membership. The determination as to whether a board or committee shall opt out shall be made by majority vote of the board and committee and confirmed by the town council as prescribed in subsection 4 below. So with this policy, at least the way it was drafted for the previous town I worked for, gave the opportunity for each board to opt out, but have that be confirmed by, in that case, the selectmen, here is the town council, to okay them opting out. And then there's some procedures that talk about the actual process for opting out. We don't have to go into that right now because we're still talking theoretically, so we don't have to go into the nuts and bolts of it. In this policy too, no member of the town board shall participate in a meeting remotely unless the following requirements are met. Members of the town board who participate remotely and all persons present at the meeting shall be clearly audible to each other. Members of the town board who participate remotely must have access to the same materials being used at the meeting location, so everybody has the same information. And here's a discussion point. If you want a quorum of the town board to be physically present, I know a lot of the issues we have are people can't physically come and they want to have a meeting. So if we do allow remote participation, will the person on the phone count towards the quorum or not? That's something the council needs to make a decision on. In this policy, the answer is no. They wanted a physical quorum present. Other people on the phone could join, but they wouldn't count as part of the quorum. And then it goes into some reasons why you would want to allow remote participation. It's a little bit, so the way the wording is here is that chairs of town boards are encouraged to interpret these rules in a strict fashion and to continue to induce all members to attend meetings in person as a general rule due to the inherent benefits of physical presence in a meeting. Chair people are encouraged to inform their colleagues that remote participation will not be permitted simply as a matter of convenience. A member of a town board shall be permitted to participate remotely in a meeting if the person chairing the meeting determines that one or more of the following factors makes the member's physical attendance unreasonably difficult, yet still leaves that member able to actively participate in the meeting. So the things are personal illness, personal disability, family or other emergency, military service, or significant geographic distance. And I have had experience where somebody actually did call in from vacation in Hawaii, which was interesting. They still wanted, but they still wanted to participate doing their civic duty even though while on vacation.
Right, where, I know, right, Bill, where, what did you, can you list those again? You said
Sure.
personal illness.
Personal disability, family or other emergency, military service, or significant geographic distance. Those were the 5 that town said were okay reasons to participate remotely. And any determination by the person chairing the meeting to allow or not allow remote participation shall be final and shall not be appealable. That's the wording in this policy. And then just the last category, well, there's 2 more categories. One is about technology, and what it says in this case is that the town will make best efforts to have telephone conferencing equipment available at its primary meeting locations. I know our room has a telephone over by Lisa. Downstairs, B and C, I believe B and C do have phones, but today we saw their phone. So primary meeting locations, the library, I'm not sure how that would work in there, but.
They don't have those in the little meeting rooms.
Yep.
But
They have a library program room.
the library program.
Do they have one? I don't think they have one.
Well,
The one we were
they
at
do
last
have
night?
they do have the capability.
Oh, okay.
I don't,
I don't know that there's one
Physically
physically there.
Yeah, and perhaps
Sorry, we were beginning.
that's okay.
discussion.
And generally libraries are, that room's used for larger gatherings, so maybe that's not the best use of that room to do that, but I digress. The focus of the chair should always be on maintaining the flow of the meeting. If the chair determines that technical difficulties are inhibiting the progress of the meeting, the chair may elect to terminate the participation of the remote member. If technical difficulties arise resulting in the loss of connection with the remote participant, that participant's attendance shall be terminated. The meeting should not be interrupted while any attempt to restore the connection is made. And lastly, each individual town board that anticipates using remote participation shall determine which of the acceptable methods may be used by its members. And then just the last category here, any member of a town board who wishes to participate remotely shall, as soon as possible prior to the meeting, notify the chairperson of that desire to participate remotely, and the facts supporting his or her request, the reason supporting his or her request. And if the person chairing the meeting approves the request for remote participation, he or she shall make any necessary arrangements to assure that the required equipment is available. If it's not available, then the person chairing the meeting shall deny the request for remote participation. And then these are more nitty-gritty, but at the start of the meeting, the chair shall announce the name of any member who will be participating remotely and the reason for his or her remote participation. This information shall be recorded into the minutes. And then all votes taken during any meeting in which a member participates remotely shall be by roll call vote only. So that way you know who's saying what, and et cetera. I mean, there's a couple more things, but I just feel like just to kind of set the framework for this, that's a policy I've previously written.
So there's nothing for us to do in this tonight except discuss. So, how do you guys feel about that?
I think it's a good idea. I think just modern day, a lot of people travel, they move around, and engaging more and having more participation at meetings, even if they can't make that. I mean, I think even the Library Foundation has on a couple occasions on non-voting items called in and asked for them to be included into the discussion. They might not vote for anything, but just that they can hear and provide input.
Yeah, I'm thinking, I know we've got some smaller boards or commissions that have had problems with having people always available. So if there was a phone-in option.
Yeah, Blight is one of them.
Specifically, I was thinking Blight.
But the trouble with Blight is there is information that sometimes comes up at the meeting that person phoning in would not be able to get there to be able to see. There's always a sharing of pictures at the meetings, and some of them are taken on the way to the meeting. That's something they would obviously have to work out, but I'm bringing it up just because there may be other boards and commissions that have the same thing, like planning and zoning. Kurt could probably talk to you a little bit more about that.
No, planning and zoning usually has quorum, but there's a bunch of communities and people are going to and are traveling, so I would like to see if we can make it that quorum can be attained via phone. That's something I'd be interested in. That's checked out with FOIA and all of that.
Because planning and zoning, there's a few people that can only request information via paper. So if they're out, they are not able to get the paper prior to the event. But that's only some of them.
It might not work for every board commission, but I think give them the opportunity for certain boards, I think would be beneficial.
One of the other things to add to that 5 list, if that 5 is something, one of the reasons why could be that where someone's out on town council business and is unable to get back in time because of distance. I know sometimes I have tourism meetings that start at 4 in Middletown, and getting back here for 7 might prove an issue. I've already missed a executive session because of that.
So you're thinking calling in when you're like driving, or?
Oh, no, I would, yes, I'm gonna drive.
And it's free.
Dedicated.
It's free.
No, I would assume driving would be a little bit distracting, so I would advocate for not allowing driving, except for listening. No, I don't want it at all. I would use whatever office I was in.
Oh, and
in
just stay and do it?
Just stay there and listen.
Okay.
And I'm sure that there might be other meetings and commission meetings that we might have to go to. Not like the Eastern Highland Health District is off-site. I don't know who else you guys have anything off-site.
The other thing would be the site walks for conservation. I don't think, depending on where you're going, you'd have to have a signal to hold a steady phone call.
I was gonna say, we can like Facebook Live.
Yeah.
We don't do crowds.
Well, I think that's, at least exploring the opportunities. We're having Mike draft up the resolution or draft up the plan for us here. and then we can address it as part of the council. Anything that we want to add in or just sort of elaborate on it, where I think that with the geographic difficulty, I think that will cover a lot of the issues as far as being out of town at another meeting or something like that, where it's difficult to get in there. But I think that's something that we could, at least have the draft version, and then we could expand on it as we deem appropriate.
I'd like to see some more restrictive language in there. To maintain a quorum, I'd say yes, but if there's a quorum present, I would say no. You don't need somebody to have a quorum. If you have a quorum physically present, then I would say the rule should be no phone ins. Because it can be kind of cumbersome, we've done it. And sometimes it can be cumbersome and distracting.
They can make a vote at that meeting if they,
At the beginning.
think it's gonna be cumbersome. Yeah,
That's the current policy.
yeah, so if someone did quorum and they feel this is too difficult to understand what someone's saying, they can make a vote to quorum them, so
I like it, just because I know that, there's times, with work and everything else that, we all kind of have other jobs too. So, if something comes up, we're out of town and that, to be able to participate via phone, even if, like you said, if it's like the roll call vote or whatever, at least everybody's at the meeting and participating, understand what's going on. They may not physically be here, but if they have their packet and everything else in front of them, they can still be part of the conversation.
I mean, I've been beneficiary to this previously as part of the last board when we were having discussions. So I'm in favor of it, but I just would like to see the language, the specifics of it, and then we could work on it and develop some nuances that we want to include inside there to make sure that it meets all the requirements that we want for satisfying FOIA, but also working for us and making sure that it's something that is used properly. Not saying that any of us would ever abuse it, but just to make sure so that we can set the standard for all the other boards.
To John's point, there has been, when people have called in, you can't see body language, you can potentially interrupt someone. You might not see intent, you can't interact with the audience. So there can be issues, and there's also the issue of making sure that the person on the phone can be heard on the TV, when they're calling in. So there's those considerations that need to be made. The only thing that I have about the distance is maybe, and I'm not talking because of work, let's say I decide to live 6 months down in Florida. Are you guys gonna let me call in?
Are you trying to tell us?
No, okay, I shouldn't say 6 months. What if I decide to move down to Florida for 4 months? And I request to be called in because that's distance. I'm still a resident of Tolland. I'm just bringing that up.
Yeah, I think that's again something that we'll need to develop.
It's something to.
I was gonna say you're off season if you're thinking about it. You should have gone a few months.
We're here for 2 years. And there's still that next there's that, and maybe we want to put a limit if it's not because of disability or illness that you only get twice a year to call in. This way, I'm not taking the 4 months down in Florida and calling in for that time frame.
Well, I think we kind of maybe would have, I think that language would address it if we, did you say something? Oh, I think you did. We can put language in there or whatever, but Mike, I thought maybe you mentioned something about, you discussed it at the beginning of the meeting, I'm away on business.
Yeah, it's not supposed to be for convenience purposes, the chair is supposed, so the person participating remotely is supposed to contact the chair ahead of time to let him or her know why they're not going to be present and they want to participate remotely. And the chair will state that for the record at the beginning of the meeting, who's on the phone and why they're not in person. So, to your point, if they're down in Florida 3 months a year, that could be a problem. People will start to say, are they really serious about being a board member?
But if I'm elected, how could you get rid of that?
We have the impeachment process, so you're good.
But I think that looking at some possible limitations as far as the time frame where, unless an exigency that that if it's going to be out of town on business or something like that for this specific meeting, contacting the town chair, a week in advance, because it's something that that they would be able to develop and be able to have everything set, as opposed to waiting the day of, unless it's an exigency where you just can't make it that day with no prior plans. But I think before we go any further with it, I'd like to see a draft of what Mike has and adopt it, and then we can discuss it and develop it from there.
Yeah. And I'd like to have us consider for other boards and commissions the difference between a majority vote and a unanimous vote. You know, do we want to allow a majority vote means like on this group 4 against 3? Well, it might bring some contention. A unanimous vote by the entire group that yes, it's allowed in our board or commission. Maybe that's I feel better with that kind of vote than with a
Or a 2/3 vote, more than.
I mean, because I mean, I understand one desiring a unanimous, but at the same time that if it's something where somebody's legitimately unable to attend, and then it comes down to a vote on a specific issue, that there's an easy way to sort of end, to filibuster or to end a conversation on something by just saying, no, we don't agree. Where if the person was here physically beforehand, they would be able to participate. So, but again, before we commit to anything,
I'm talking about majority versus unanimous about if they want to implement this policy.
Oh, okay. Okay, I misunderstood. So,
I wasn't clear. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought you meant like whether or not they can join the call.
Right. No. Whether they decide to participate in this policy, I would feel better if we told them to.
Well, I'm a little like kind of weird on that too, because would they have to renew it every time they change, like anybody on the board kind of thing? Like to me, it's like if you're asking somebody to make a policy decision now and it's going to be there forever and ever, that's kind of like, you know, what if like PCC says no, we don't want to do this, and then like 2 of the 5 or 3 of the 5 people leave, we get new people on, and they do want to do it. Like, how would we go about bringing it back up?
One of the sections, and I know this is just a draft, but one of the sections I did glaze over was the procedure for opting out. And the way that it's written, it has the procedure of how to opt out and also how to opt back in. So you can go back and
Good, so you kind of address that. Because I would want to make sure that people have the option, like.
If anybody, the way it's written, if the town board is successful in opting out of remote participation but wishes to revisit their decision in the future, they may repeat steps 4A through 4C above to opt back in. So you'll see when you see the draft what that means. And then I think just to clarify something I heard earlier, so this policy or whatever policy you choose to adopt basically removes the need to have that beginning of the meeting vote each time whether or not to allow remote participation, because this is what allows remote participation. So the person participating remotely will coordinate through the chairperson to make the technical necessities available to remote participate. Or perhaps you can say chairperson and or staff member responsible for those committees that have a staff person. Like, you would let me know so I can have the phone up and running and Tammy or whoever the chairperson is.
I think it's a great point that you mentioned Stafford, because what if the incident is the chair of a board or commission broke their leg and can't come to the meeting but want to participate? And maybe there's a vice chair in that board or commission, would they be able to take over that authority? So probably having language that allows the chair or vice chair to make that decision in the event that the chair's not in attendance, I guess.
Or if it's the chair that, exactly, like, you know, I probably, last night I promised not to breathe on anybody. I'm like trying to keep my distance down.
To be there.
I can just be on the phone and you can run it, Good point.
So I'll mock it up so that it's Tolland specific, and we'll have a draft, and you let me know when you would like it for the old business, and we'll put it on an agenda, and then hopefully we can adopt it. This is a policy, so we don't.
Brenda's pushing everything.
This is not
everything's going
It's a policy. So and the council sets policies for the entire community, the town, so this would apply to all boards unless they opt out.
As is a general thought, probably April after we get to the budget season. I don't think this is something that needs to be rushed in.
And maybe we can ask if there's boards or commissions that want to have some input, they can email us just to, you know.
That's not a bad idea.
Having like direct that as being consired and maybe having their thoughts and.
Okay.
The council is looking at implementing a remote calling policy. How do you feel? Kind of thing.
Okay.
Because I do think this would be beneficial to a lot of people. I know there's just a lot of people who have, especially with work stuff. You know, there's no such like 9 to 5 anymore. You can be anywhere at any time and get stuck someplace and still want to be part of the meeting. So Okay. Anything else? Anyone want to talk about this one? No? We're good? All right. Agenda item 8.4, discussion on possibly rescinding the bond resolution for the fire truck 240 and funding it with unassigned general fund balance.
Okay, so fire rescue truck number 240 was part of last year's capital plans, and that will be for fiscal year 20-21, I believe.
19-20.
19-20.
All right.
Okay, so 19-20. And it was funded in the amount of $750,000. It passed through the budget process. But looking at the minutes of 2 meetings over the summertime, it was June, the last meeting in June and the first meeting in July. My predecessor had talked about in those minutes whether or not it was prudent to consider using general fund balance to also perhaps partially fund or fully fund the fire truck in that $750,000 amount rather than bonding for it. So the bond authorization had already passed last year after July 1st. And Mr. Werner had said if there's available cash to pay it down, consider doing that rather than incurring more debt. So at this point, so it's been almost 8 months since then at that point, since July 1st. The fire truck has not been procured yet. We were looking to see how to fund it based on you want to bond for it, you want to pay cash for it, some combination of the two. And it's a discussion point that we're having tonight, but should the council choose to proceed with changing the funding source so that it's no longer a bond authorization or no longer a full bond authorization, I believe it will require a public hearing.
Okay. Just a quick question for John. Is it still around 750?
If you buy a rescue truck, the prices, we started off at $625. It's around $725, $750. You go rescue, you're up to $825, $875. The more that you wait, it's 3 to 5 to 25% a year. So we're looking at some other options to try to save the town. We might not call it a rescue, but with like what you guys just discussed with modern video technology, our manufacturers are watching it live, so they'll know what we have for dollar values, and that's what probably most likely the dollar values will come in. There's concepts out there that are SWAT concepts that we're looking at because of manpower issues and response-wise, but I'd rather not say much on TV to say how much the dollar value is going to be, because when we go up for specs, it'll come probably pretty close to that. But we started this concept in 2011-13 and spent a lot of money and staff to go to various places to look and put a design together. That was back at $600,000. So you're adding money as we wait.
Anybody have any questions regarding the item that's on the table here?
So these meeting minutes, I'm sorry, I don't have them in front of me.
Sure.
Did it say when we were gonna order the truck? Or it was, okay, go ahead.
No, please.
So I'm just, did it say when we were gonna order the truck?
I think there was no date specified, although after July 1st is when the funds would become available to begin. Now, obviously, there's a lot of work that goes into creating a bond authorization, and so it wasn't going to be July 1 on the dot. But what Mr. Werner had said in the minutes, it's the last meeting in June and the first meeting in July of 2019. He wanted to wait to see, I forget the exact date, but it was when the full year reconciliation becomes available to know exactly how much money would be left over and to see where our fund balance was at that time as well.
I'm watching both of your faces, and you're both like starting. It's like
I'm still forming my questions because I'm disappointed we're not moving forward.
I'm sorry, so did we authorize the bond, right? So, but it hasn't been issued yet, right? Because we didn't buy it, right? So it's just sitting there waiting for us to do something with it. Is that in my layman's terms, yeah, correct?
Right.
Okay.
The problem is there's two different apparatus. If I can speak, Mr. Rose.
Yeah, do you want a microphone?
So there was two different projects. Obviously, Doug's in the back of the room here. We started the project back in 2011, spent staff to go out and look at the trucks. And then there was discussions about the refurb of engine tank 140, and then there was discussions about the bond stuff, correct?
Correct.
And they were looking at tying the two projects to go out for the same dollar value, right?
Correct.
So ET 140 has not gone out for the refurb either since July 1st. So sitting today, that truck will not pass for this community a DOT inspection. So we had two projects. We are worked out with Mr. Rosen to go forth and put a set of specs together to get the refurb out, because that is in the capital of this year. But to do a set of specs, we're gonna have to come back and obviously get a couple different quotes and come back to another meeting to get that out. When you send an apparatus out for a refurb, you're looking at anywhere between 6 to 7 months.
Easily.
If not, to build a rescue truck or a squad.
You're looking at 18 months to build a custom fire apparatus, which means that fire truck, by the time you actually specify it and award a contract, probably won't be delivered in the tenure of your term here as the town council. It'll be the next town council that truck is received in.
And I-84 is not slowing down.
No.
So that's just where we are right now with two major projects, and we're finishing up the service truck right now as well.
Are you guys ready to order 240?
No.
No.
I have, like I said, 7 different set of specs. I've looked at 4 different communities of what they spec either for a rescue truck. Then at East Hartford just to deliver their rescue truck, which was $850. I just showed it, yeah, about $850, and that was looked at a few years ago. So looking at a different apparatus, we're looking at squad concepts to try to combine, and then manpower issue, try to combine it out to the community, rotating the older stock out. This rescue truck will obviously be surplus and sold out, but I can't tell you what the dollar value was. Once we go to sell that, the wise choice for the community is to take the funds of that and put it back into the emergency capital apparatus reserve fund, which we should let that grow as a community, because then we would be sitting here looking at who's paying and who's doing what. If that cookie pot grows, then we won't be here, because the ladder truck that we just got a price on, that we refurbed a few years ago, that we bought for this community in 1990 was $275. That truck right now today just got delivered at East Hartford at $1.3 million.
Ouch.
So just unfortunately our service, and I apologize to the residents, that we can't buy ourselves the deal with lots. It's the market.
There's no state bid for fire trucks.
There's state bid wise, but you get what you pay for. You try to look at the mid-line manufacturers. So some of the manufacturers I'd rather not say on TV of where we were in the past of looking at, and we're gaining 20 years, and we're pushing these apparatus out to 30 years. So we have two apparatuses right now that are 94s. The oldest one's an 87. We're pushing them beyond what we tell you we're going to buy a truck and make it last for 20 years. We're pushing it as we refurb. I can't give you that plan anymore in the community, just because of what is happening with everyone's personal vehicles or apparatus, the salt factor and the wear and tears in the apparatus. I can't give you that 20 definite line, but you get what you pay for, if that makes sense.
Okay, Brenda?
Hypothetical, if we were to vote, just say go to bonding, what's the earliest we can order this? Keep status quo.
I think
How long would it take to order it, John?
By the time you end up going for
If we decide today that we voted to go to bonding.
Well, that's gonna be the end up the question for obviously the council and the Brady town managers. There are provisions to do certain things that we were and they passed as far as bid waivers. We're not looking for specific manufacturers who just hand somebody a check. But obviously there's provisions for bid waivers. If I had it my way, I would end up taking another set of specs that we looked at from 3 different communities. You guys, if I'm wrong or not, but we looked at 3 different communities, and I'd like to get into a legal battle where I don't want to pay somebody to do engineering specs when it was already designed next door. We're just going to change the color and change the name and the font, and that should save some significant dollars for the community. So we would have to look at 3 different set of specs, sit down with the committee, make a final decision. So anywhere between 30, 45 days, I'm guessing, and then we would have to set it out. If we have to set it out for an RFP, then we add another 30 days, 60 days, and then go back for a meeting. But I mean, if we did a bid waiver, it had to the motions to move forward, yeah, I got aggressive staff.
Council will need to approve the contract though.
Well, the contract, unless they approve a bid waiver and then go through the motions.
Well, the other part is too, if there's a piggyback bid off of another community.
You're not gonna get any piggybacks if they're trying for Tolland County to buy fire gloves with 13 towns.
Well, who's gonna change those?
That takes an act of Congress.
So, and if we were to decide to go to a public hearing to do this, use the fund balance, we're looking at whenever we can add a public hearing to our schedule, so we're moving it out.
And not that we're nervous of the public
At
hearing,
least
but
we could, or
Because we'd have to advertise the public hearing, and we really shouldn't do that tonight, it's not just a discussion. And so we'd have to say 2 weeks from now, we would say that would be when we set the public hearing for the following meeting after that.
we can't set a public hearing.
It's not, I don't,
No, you have to.
We have to notice it, right,
Notice
but
it,
the
everything else,
noticing
yeah.
it is,
The other thing is though, as far as, there is a funding resolution and an appropriation in place. So at this point, John could be moving, unless you say you're not buying that truck whatsoever. He can get the ball rolling by, getting his specs or whatever he needs to start moving forward. It's just how we're gonna pay for it, and certainly no cash would really be going out the door until probably closer to getting it, unless there's some sort of a deposit required. So right now, he could start moving forward with doing whatever he needs to do to get the pricing going or getting contracts approved or whatever. It's just
We
the
have funding in
mechanism
place.
of paying the bill when it comes. So if we end up just bonding it, then we're all set, you can start moving. If you decide you want to rescind the bond authorization and use fund balance, then that, is gonna take a couple of meetings, because you have to go through the whole rescission and appropriation process.
but John can still move forward.
I just don't, and I will take your direction, and obviously I work for everyone here, so obviously I'll take that direction. I just don't want to go through the whole committee factors and putting people's times and traveling and going over again and designing, I mean.
Madam Chair, I have a question regarding.
No.
So this, just for my ignorance on the bonding and financing and everything else, is if we say we want to go forward with just the bonding at this point, and then as we progress forward, we decide, that after going through the budget process and everything else, and we feel that there's enough money to actually pay for it outright, can we then use that and pay off the bond on it, and then
No,
yeah.
there's very strict IRS regulations.
Okay.
Once the debt is issued, they're trying to refund it earlier and things like that is very challenging and unlikely to be able to do. It's a long, involved.
But if I may, but at least at this point, we have enough authorization and enough, since it's already gone to, the bonding has been approved at this point, at least to go forward with the, getting the specifications, placing the order at this point, and then we have some time, if we wanted to, go forward with a public hearing or something like that to then change the bonding to a outright funding.
As long as I haven't issued any debt, official debt, I have not issued anything yet.
Most likely when you go to sign
Then you still have the opportunity.
a contract, you're gonna have to put a deposit down.
We can, depending on how much the deposit is, there's things we can do, but still,
You're looking at the deposit, plus you're gonna have milestone payments that are gonna be involved, so
yeah.
as soon as the cabin chassis is built, you're gonna have to put down another 15-20%. Once it goes into construction of the body, you're gonna have to put down another certain amount of percentage for that. So it's not like you're waiting to pay the entire bill at the end, you're making milestone payments throughout the entire contract.
Which is fine, which is fine.
So am I understanding this correctly? Sorry.
That's
Just a couple of questions. So anywhere between 750 and 825, or are we more than that?
We had the 750 because we waited.
Right.
We've already hit the January deadline.
Right.
So what ends up happening is just like my fire gear. My fire gear took 50%. So every time we're waiting, it
Right.
goes up. So if I went back up to bid right now,
Yeah.
we're looking at cutting stuff now.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Chief. what do we pay on interest? What would we pay in interest on a bond like that?
Projections here on a 20-year bond would be $750,000 principal and about $209,000 interest. 209,687.
For how long?
20-year.
And that could potentially be less. That's with an interest rate of about 2.75%. However, at the time you issue debt, you can have things that are called bond premiums that could probably bring that cost down to like a 2% over the life. But still, it's up there.
Right, and what, if you don't mind me asking, what's our overall town debt in terms of bonds? Do we have that information?
That's a schedule, right?
Yeah, I mean,
It's
34 million or something. I don't want to give you incorrect information.
No, that's fine.
It's 34.
It's in
I
our
appreciate
paper.
that. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
John?
I'm done, Madam Chair, thank you.
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding this. So if this bond is rescinded and the whole process starts again, it's not going to delay the acquisition of that apparatus, is that correct?
Well, so I don't think we would, so we don't want to not have the funding source at the moment. So if we're gonna send John to start getting the process going, we wouldn't want to rescind the bond right away. We want to say, he needs to have a funding source in order to do anything. He can't, So we would only rescind the bond authorization if council has the public hearing and they decide they will desire to use cash instead of bond debt.
And my question around that is, what will that do to the acquisition of that truck? Is it going to push it out that much further?
If you went to the public hearing?
Yeah.
It would push it out probably a month because you'd have to set the public hearing in 2 weeks for the following 2 weeks. So we'd be back here in about a month's time having a public hearing.
If we issue this, I'm sorry, wrong question. If we use this money out of the unassigned general fund balance, do we have any policies that say we have to replenish that money and at what rate? Like, do we have anything that says we have to have a certain percent? And what I'm worried about is us using this fund balance and then finding out we have to replenish the money within 2 to 3 years, which means it'll come out of the mill rate. And I just want to make sure.
Yeah. If it goes, but that's the policy that we passed last time, if it goes below 10, which.
So that's what,
Do you want me to respond?
yeah, well, I do, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, we do have a formal fund balance reserve policy, and as Tammy said, if the unassigned falls below 10%, or even all fund balance falls below 10%, then there's a whole plan of, depending on what level it is below 10%, how quickly we have to replenish that fund. Later on tonight in the agenda packet, I've included kind of like a financial overview which shows the impact of using $750,000 out of fund balance this year for the truck and not, to kind of show you where, if all holds true with what I'm estimating year end, which changes daily, it'll kind of give you a ballpark of where you might be if you did decide to use fund balance, as far as that percentage.
So everybody knows I've been vocal about this. I'm for using the money that we had left last year in the fund balance and paying cash. It's gonna save the town $200,000. I wanna make sure John has the approvals he needs to go forward and start the process. And this is something I think, we should use the money that was left over from last year. And like you said, when I reviewed this, that we're looking at having money. What you're gonna go over later is we're looking at possibly having some exceeding revenues this year. So I think the fund balance will be fine, and the whole purpose of the debt plan was to eventually get us to the point that we paid cash. So to me, this makes sense, rather than incur more debt when we know Birch Grove is coming online and it's gonna push our debt higher. This is one less item that's gonna be in the debt, so that might give us a little bit more room in the next few years when we know that we're gonna have to increase the taxes to pay for Birch Grove. And it saves the town $200,000 in interest. So from the accounting perspective, this is a no-brainer for me. I don't know how everybody else feels, but I'm all in favor of moving forward to go to a public hearing on this. Anyone else?
Can I just speak for 1 second? So the only time since I've been here, we've only leased one fire truck, and that was against the lease. And that was over 10, 15, what was it?
2005 to 2010, we spent an extra $170,000.
$176,000 we spent leasing the fire truck. I'm against leases.
We're not leasing.
No, but I'm saying with the fund balance the same way. We should probably revisit down the road our emergency equipment apparatus and all the other fee schedules that we looked at, because that apparatus reserve should be growing for this community, to not be sitting here in a public meeting, to be paying cash like you say. 100% agree with you. I don't feel comfortable as a taxpayer paying another $200,000. I live here too, and I don't think it's fair, but I think that, unfortunately we wrote a grant and we have $450,000 air pack schedule that's coming up down the road as well, that we can't get the money for. So unfortunately, we're pushing these capital projects off where it's growing, and it's unfortunately situation. But like I said, we should be looking at those type of activities and revisit those type of systems where that sits there that funds this type of stuff, because when that $1.3 million come up, how am I going to sit here and justify that to the community? I mean, we bought a used area, but buying used stuff in today's day and age that's around New England, you're buying someone else's headaches, you're buying somebody else's problems.
Issues.
So I'm sorry, Madam Chair, then are you asking for a vote tonight whether or not?
To bring it to public hearing. So at this point, the town,
I just wanted clarification, so.
yeah, I think,
I just want to call, I'm not sure that we can do that, because the way the agenda was worded tonight was truly to begin the discussion on this. Usually when we set a public hearing, we usually put it on the agenda that we're going to set a public hearing consideration. I just want to be careful with that.
So yeah, it would be establishing a new item at the next meeting to then discuss and then vote to approve it to go to public hearing, and then we have to do another 2 weeks for the actual setting. Yeah, for the notice.
Yeah.
There's no way to add an item to the agenda.
I don't think
When it comes to a public hearing, I'm not sure, but I think you have to, if you're gonna try to set a public hearing tonight, I think you have to do
You gotta be fair.
certain
Yeah, I would say-
Right,
notifications
absolutely.
and things like that. I honestly, I don't know the actual legal
I didn't bring that
requirements behind that.
I just want to make sure that John has a funding source, which I think right now what we're saying is he does. He does, because we approved that already, so I want John to be able to move forward with starting the ordering while we're doing the public hearing, because then whichever way it goes, if it's voted yes or no, he's
As
got a
long
solid
as you leave a funding source in place, he can start moving forward. Until, they start needing cash, we have to start moving
So
forward.
John, you
one way
can
or
move
another.
forward, but you have to wait to get the deposit until we have a public hearing.
Is there a way to add that to the motion that, that we're trying to decide on the funding source, but he does have the funding? Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, there'd be no motion tonight, I don't think.
The only thing would be.
No, I mean, in our agreement, whatever we're saying tonight, to me, it's just.
Well, I think is that already there? That's already there, right? So, all right, so just confirming John has a funding source, start the process, and then let's get this on the next agenda to set the public hearing. And we'll set the public hearing for the second meeting in March, and we'll go with that, if everybody's okay with that.
Right, so no action tonight, but just looking out old business.
Good? Everyone's good?
I think the other thing was that if we were to take that route, the only sunk cost we already have, I think, is what, $3,300 or $3,200 of potential legal fees for any company process of doing that. So.
Which is,
Yeah, no,
yeah. Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
You good? Alrighty. Then it gets us to 8.5, appointments to vacancies on various municipal boards.
So Madam Chair, I'd entertain a motion to appoint Claudette Morehouse, 89 Mellow Way, to the term of 11/26/2020 to 11/9/2021 for the zoning board of appeals, as well as Diana Bump of the King Jerry Circle for the term of 11/26/2020 to 11/9/2021 as zoning board of appeals alternates. And the resignation letter from Steve Caron for a position on ZBA, and that was dated February 5th of 2020.
Can I ask a question about the dates? It's 11/26/2020, so we're
So
not,
they're not appointing her until November?
right. So is that supposed to be 2/26/2020?
Good catch, Brenda. This is basically.
Because I don't want you to sit around doing nothing for 9
Right.
months. So I'd like to make a motion to change the dates on both of those to 2/26/2020.
Is that today? Oh,
That's tomorrow.
That's tomorrow, yeah.
Is that okay if it's tomorrow? Okay.
I would second.
All right, so the motion on the table is to accept them as amended with the dates to 2/26 and seconded,
Yes.
right?
Correct.
Okay, we're all good here, right? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstained? Motion passes.
Thank you for stepping up. Always need more volunteers.
Yes.
If you look at the packet, if you look above the packet too, if you smile online, there's still several openings that Lou and I are working through, and there's people that are interested and if it's in due to conflict with conflicts. So, there's always opportunities to be involved.
And the blight really needs some help.
I was
Yes.
gonna say, is this list now, is this list all updated so we can share it to say, this is what?
Yes, I believe it gets updated every meeting, and we keep it, that was a good catch, I'm not sure what happened with that, but the list is as accurate.
Okay. Alrighty. That. Excuse me.
I think the only thing we didn't mention is that we did receive letters from the Tolland Logan Town Committee endorsing those two individuals, so they just went through the process properly to have those appointments approved.
Okay. Excuse me. That gets us to old business now. 9.1, consideration of a resolution to approve the purchase and sale agreement between the town of Tolland and Stephen D. Williams for the purchase of the parcel described as Wilburcross 22/K/020, 9.7 acres more or less, authorizing Michael Rosen, town manager, to sign the purchase and sale agreement.
So, Madam Chair, if you would like to entertain, I have a bit of a timeline that I kind of drafted to kind of bring us to where we are tonight. Do you mind if I go through it?
Absolutely.
All right, so let's start back at the beginning. So this parcel known as Wilburcross, as aforementioned in the opening. So back in 2003, Section 34A of the Special Act, number 03-19, the General Assembly conveyed this parcel from the state to the town of Tolland for open space purposes. In that provision, in that resolution, it said if that the town does not use or it does not use the parcel for that property of open of that purpose of open space, or if it sells or leases the property, the property would revert to the state and the deed would become null and void. Fast forward to 2011. And Section 14 of the Special Act 11-16 of the General Assembly amends 03-19 in two ways. A, it quitclaims the parcel from the open space only provision and also the retention of ownership provision, thereby allowing the town to sell it or lease it. And B, it conveys to the town for purposes of economic development, so instead of open space. So if this property is not used for this purpose of economic development, the parcel would revert to the state of Connecticut. But if the town sells or leases all or any portion of the parcel, any consideration, monetary consideration received will be transferred to the state. So this parcel, from my understanding, and I wasn't here, but this parcel sat vacant until 2019, when no one had approached the town at that point with any ideas of how to develop it for economic development. That's when the abutting property owner, Stephen Williams, approached the town about a proposed use of the Wilburcross parcel to support economic development of his parcel. And conversations led to a letter of intent being voted on by the town council June 25th, 2019, using normal agenda setting methods, which was 2 meetings. So this was actually posted in 2 meetings in June 2019. Where the letter of intent was on the agenda, and for those of you who were here at that time, the town council voted on the letter of intent unanimously. The parcel was valued by the town assessor at the amount of $446,000, 446,200, and the sale of real property triggers or requires a referendum unless one of 4 exclusions apply. And exclusion number 1 allows the sale of real property without a referendum if value of the property being sold is less than 1% of the total town budget for the current fiscal year, or about $56 million, which is total budget in the previous fiscal year. So $446,000 is under that $560,000 threshold. That was, the town assessor did that. He's an appraiser by trade. He's the person who did the last 2 town evaluations. So he's somebody who understands and knows this industry. And so he has deemed that this parcel is lower than the 1% threshold. So that brings us to the next step, which is the purchase and sale agreement. So the purchase and sale agreement, so 10.3 of the charter requires that to sell property, public hearing and there needs to be a public hearing and 1 notice in the newspaper. But section 7-163E of the Connecticut General Statute requires 2 notices and a sign to be posted on the real property to be sold. So the 2 notices of public hearing were printed in the paper in January, and the public hearing was held February 11th, which was our last council meeting. The purchase and sale agreement incorporates much of what was in the letter of intent from back in June, but not verbatim. So letter of intent is a starting point, it's not the end of negotiations. But the purchase and sale agreement is, it's basically a binding way for the developer and the town to work together for eventual purchase. It itself is not the actual purchase. There are still many provisions that need to be met. There's wetlands provisions, there's zoning provisions, there's a lot of steps that need to be done. But the purchase and sale agreement itself is the binding document. It's not the actual sale itself. And I just want to mention too, I took a note of when I heard this earlier about back when this first came up in September where I signed the document. It's not that I did it on a whim, the council did vote on it at the time, and it was following the letter of intent and the previous guidance from the town manager prior to me, so it's not like I just signed it just for fun. So we had a process in place. So that brings us to tonight. There was some questions raised during the public hearing about the purchase and sale agreement, which council can choose to vote on tonight. The purchase and sale agreement gives Mr. Williams until 2023 to be granted all mandatory permits, approvals, and sign-offs from various town regulatory bodies, such as the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Inland Wetlands Commission. Any grading Mr. Williams does requires prior approval of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And then for tonight's meeting, the town sought formal, confidential, and attorney-client privilege legal opinion from the town attorney for guidance. And what was talked about at the last meeting was protections that were asked for to insulate the town parcel from any harm that might come of the parcel. And what we think is the right way to protect ourselves against that is to entrust the other agencies that are not within the jurisdiction of the town council to keep an eye on it, and as the process unfolds, to make sure that any provisions are built into their permitting process, whether I heard last time there was some ideas about bonding requirements or perhaps about protections against clear-cutting trees, things of that nature, but that would be done during those parts of the process. This purchase and sale agreement just starts the ball rolling to get Mr. Williams to the next level of the next regulatory body. So that's sort of how I just wanted to kind of introduce the item tonight. I'm sure there's some questions, and I'll do the best I can to answer them. Thank you.
Questions? Discussion?
Mr. Rose, just to be clear, if this goes forward, the purchase sale agreement is codified, Mr. Williams will still have to go through wetlands, planning and zoning, anything, before he could do anything on this property, correct?
So wetlands would guide, well, so Mr. Williams is actually here, so his application was up at wetlands, and they've stayed it until this gets settled, so he's going to be back up in wetlands first to talk about any issues there. Then planning and zoning would be the next body after that. My understanding after speaking with our town attorney is that it does not come back before council, so not mandatorily, perhaps voluntarily, but this would get Mr. Williams to go to the land use boards.
And then, if I may, and then again, after going through all that process, it's only after all these that the proposals for development are approved by all these, if they are approved by all these other committees and organizations and agencies, that we would then proceed forward to an actual sale contract. And that's where we can then also add in other provisions regarding restrictions on the sale of the property, is that correct?
So I think the other regulatory boards can add in conditions or contingencies. I don't believe this purchase and sale agreement, I don't believe we are going to be able to do that because this was negotiated to the state that it's in right now. There are other mechanisms in place besides the purchase and sale agreement, such as him going before wetlands, proving that he's going to be using it for economic development purposes, proving that it's in line with the zone in the area there. I would believe that that's going to trigger other public hearings rather than the one that we had last time. So there are multiple other steps. And that's why this agreement gives him 4 years, or now it's a little bit less, but until 2023 to secure all of these permits and sign-offs before he can actually do it.
Before we actually have a final purchase contract.
So we're signing the purchase and sale agreement if the council desires to do so, to allow him to engage and go on to the next step after this. It's a binding agreement, unlike a letter of intent. This is got more teeth to it. There are provisions about where people, who and how to walk away and things like that. But this is an agreement that if the council wants to sign off on it, it's a serious thing. But it itself is not the final sale. It's just continuing the steps needed for the final sale.
The final sale doesn't occur unless there's an approved final design build by PZC.
Yes.
Which would require all of the other steps along the way to be followed and gone through also, correct?
There's conditions of closing on page 2. It says you need to have good, marketable, insurable, title-free of encumbrances, obtaining any and all approvals needed with all appeal periods having expired in order to complete the sale of the property as contemplated by this agreement. So yes, and that's the portion of the agreement that touches on that.
So my reluctance to vote at the last meeting was based on, I think it was misinformation, because my understanding 2 weeks ago when we met was this land was going to be conveyed to Mr. Williams, and then he could just go ahead and start clearing it out without any approvals. But this is telling me that he still needs to go, before he can even do that, take that step, he still needs to go through inland wetlands, he needs to go through planning and zoning before he can do anything with that, before he can take down any trees or start grading the property.
No, it's not true.
No.
What you're talking about.
On page 7 of 11, there's a right of access to grade. So on that page, section F, right of access to grade, seller hereby grants buyer, etc., the rights to enter into the property for purposes of grading prior to closing. Such grading shall be accomplished for the purpose of developing other property of the buyer contiguous to the property. The parties acknowledge that any such grading requires the prior approval of the Tolland Planning and Zoning Commission.
So it needs to be approved. But
That's what they do.
It's his property.
Grading means taking down trees.
No, taking down trees, you can do anything you want.
Doing this, his property,
And
to take down the trees.
On his property or on the town's property?
On the town's property.
So he has the right to access.
You take down all trees. You guys sign that agreement, he can take down every tree.
All right, yeah, we're not, no back and forth, sorry.
You gotta be accurate though.
No
He's
back
not
and
being
forth.
accurate.
No back and forth.
Just wanna be
This
on
is
the
a
record.
meeting in public, not a public meeting. No back and forth. So what were you looking at there, Mike?
On page 7, there's section F, right of access to grading.
But the grading cannot occur without planning and zoning approving it, correct?
That's as written, yeah.
It's page 7.
Yeah.
It's page 7.
The parties acknowledge that any such grading requires the prior approval of the Town Planning and Zoning Commission. That's for grading.
Right.
It's not, there's nothing there that says for clearing.
But I believe that there's other provisions within the planning and zoning or in other requirements of the town that before any tree can be cut down on a town piece of property, that still has to go through planning and zoning.
But it won't be town property. once
Well, no, it still will
We
be
haven't
town
sold
property.
it has
still
not
town
been
property.
conveyed to him, so it is
It's
still.
just allowing him to go forward to present
This
his
just gives
plans.
the intent that he can buy if he follows all of the pieces, so.
So the sale
it would
doesn't-
still be town property until the sale is complete, which would be after a total, full, approved design, etc.
So there will be no grading or no clearing until it's approved.
Well,
Sorry.
no, grading can be approved by planning and zoning.
Prior to, got it.
Right, but, you couldn't clear cut the tree.
Well, in order to grade, you're gonna have to cut trees, but, planning and zoning will approve a grading plan, which is a special permit process. It's not a site plan, which is required for the ultimate sale. So it is a step, a partial step, that you can go before planning and zoning to get a grading plan, which will require a special permit process, so it will be another hearing. So, that's part of the, that's what that's referring to.
So basically, anything can be done with the property, as far as grading, as far as clearing, that it would have to go through another hearing through planning and zoning, and that there would be a public hearing on that, and then that's where then it can be addressed and either voted on, yes or no.
Yeah, that is my understanding. It's not a site plan, but it's just a grading proposal.
The sale doesn't close until those steps have been taken, right? So I think the concern is that this town property is gonna be conveyed to Mr. Williams, and then at that point, it's his property, he can do whatever he wants with it. But that doesn't happen until these steps are taken through planning, zoning, wetlands, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. So I just have one thing, I just want to read this quickly. So with the exceptions of, Mr. Williams would be able to, like you said, grading is governed by the Planning and Zoning Commission. If he is to remove trees from the property while the town still owns it, he would have to comply with section 23-65 of the Connecticut General Statutes. So I would have to just look and see what that is, but that's something that was part of the materials for tonight, so.
I believe also wrong, that was that you'd have to replace them if it ended up coming back to the town's ownership. I think that meant that he would have to replant or replace what was cut down. Yeah. But I am not entirely sure.
What was the statute?
Like 2365.
And then just to address one of the issues that I believe Mr. Bryan brought up before was the issue of the confidentiality within the planning, the PSA. Where that's, I mean, based upon my experience as an attorney and doing real estate closings before, that's pretty much boilerplate language that's included in any type of agreement like this because it's not a final purchase, and that it has to do with the issues of unfair trade and other things like that, where then if you're disclosing plans to in public regarding some of the development, that it creates an unfair trade issue. Because it's under section E, I believe that we're bringing up. But I believe that was that something that was
Yes, and also there is a provision too, we talked about for those, what is openness and freedom for information. I'd have to actually, it's in the purchase agreement. Yeah, parties acknowledge any action taken by the seller must occur by a public vote by the Tolland Town Council. And two, the Freedom of Information Act may require the seller to disclose certain items in response to a written request, and the seller may have to comply with any such request.
So 2365 is posting or distributing, removing, pruning, hindering, permit for cutting or removal. And it looks like in F, section F, says that any person, firm, or corporation other than a tree warden or his deputy who desires the cutting or removal in whole or part of any tree, shrub, or their part thereof within the limits of any parcel of municipal property. They apply in writing to the town tree warden, the borough tree warden, or the commissioner of transportation or other authority having jurisdiction, thereof for a permit to do so. So you need a permit to cut down any trees that are on the town's property. Upon receipt of such permit, but not before, the applicant may proceed with such cutting or removal, providing doing so is consistent, et cetera, et cetera. So it looks like for any trees to be cut down on a town property, you would have to have a tree approval, like, we do have a tree warden, yes. Took me a while to figure out what that was. So, that would, I think that section there protects the whole clear cutting perspective. Did that help? Yeah.
Thank you.
That did help. Good help.
Oh, me too.
Steve, you missed it. Do you want me to read it to you?
Sure.
Sorry. So it's permit for cutting or removal of trees, section 2365. Any person, firm, or corporation other than a tree warden or his deputy who desires the cutting or removal in whole or in part of any tree, shrub, or part thereof within the limits of any parcel or municipal property or public roads or grounds may apply in writing to the town tree warden, the borough tree warden, or the commissioner of transportation, or the authority having jurisdiction thereof for a permit to do so. So any trees that would be cut down, that would want it to be cut down on the town property would have to be permitted through the tree warden. And I'm assuming that's a process.
Yes, that would be right. So they would apply the view, I think it's posted on the tree, and well, that's what they do with the tree warden. So you have to have a hearing on this.
So, anybody else? So I had a couple questions that I thought were pertinent. I had asked if we could subdivide the property. And I believe the answer to that is yes.
Yes.
There's something that can be subdivided.
Yes.
Okay. And I also asked for a copy of the layout of the land, if possible, where the aquifer protection zones are. And you sent me a link for that, thank you, Mr. Rosa. And there is a aquifer protection zone that goes straight through it. I apologize for not putting my planning and zoning book and looking at what the restrictions are on an aquifer protection zone. I know that would have to be through wetlands for the decision. And I also,
sorry, when you say it goes through it, do you mean?
they would have to go, I have the map here, if you guys want to take a look at this. It's also in our planning and zoning, so it is online. But there is an aquifer protection zone that goes through the center of the property. And again, I can show it to you guys on the screen if you'd like. And I'll make sure I submit a copy for notes. I also asked to see what the wetlands were, and again, you showed me a map of that, because I wanted to, the reason why I asked for these is to see if subdividing the property would be something that we can consider. And I also asked if there's ever been any precedents for allowing commercial abutters to a town property to use that property for stormwater runoff, sorry. Because I believe that was one of the main reasons why Mr. Williams had asked for this property, because it would impact or be beneficial for the stormwater, if I was remembering correctly from the summer. And the answer was yes, we do have in the business park and possibly other places, we do allow a commercial abutter to, properly go through the right channels to get stormwater drain off. I did it again.
Runoff.
Stormwater runoff. So, for me, considering a subdivision or allowing a use of a commercial abutter to use our property for stormwater runoff, it still is commercial use of that property that's helping promote commercial use. So I just thought those were some other ideas to consider. It might help us protect some of the area in the residential area and allow, a more stricter area that would be for the development. Does that make sense?
Yes, if I may, ma'am.
Please.
But in looking at the property and viewing it through through what we've been provided, taking a quick on-site look, that the area that's immediately abutting the end of the property there, or the end of the road there, it's already considered part of it. It's already considered part of wetlands, and so that's already protected area, is my understanding. And that and there's like a short space where it's not, but then there's a large swatch shortly behind it, which is all part of wetlands, which is already protected. And then you have the protected aquifer area just off of that. So,
Has there ever been any precedent, though, that a wetlands has gotten approval because economic development was more important?
I don't know if that's something that we.
Yeah.
Exactly, that's not us, that's not our purview.
Right.
That's not our decision. So I was just trying to see if there was another option. That's the only reason why I'm bringing these up, to give these guys more things to think about. You're welcome.
thank you. And then, in looking at the parcel again, given what we've seen so far, that I believe that the area that was going to be designed for the runoff was in the, basically it looks like in the middle of the parcel area. Would you be able to bring up the map?
The one that's in it?
Yeah,
Page
that's
23 of the packet.
please.
Sure. Yeah.
All right, yes, thank you. That's my understanding that the piece of the main issue is where the runoff was going to be, at least from what the initial indications are, would be in the middle of that property, right where I guess it'd be the bushes or those three green areas, close to where the cursor is, just up a little bit closer towards the parcel owned by Steve Williams. Yeah, it's right there. Thank you. And that's what my understanding is. I know that we haven't seen any solid plans on it yet, but that's generally what has been discussed to this point, I believe. So.
Do you want me to put in the aquifer protections on this?
Yes,
Just so
please.
that you guys
If we can see it. Thank you, Brenda.
So the aquifer, roughly, the aquifer protection zone roughly runs right through here.
Okay.
So
And it
more
does
towards
go
the
over,
wet-
it goes right over this house,
That's
and
my
it comes right through
more
this way.
towards the wetlands area, right?
Yeah, this, my map doesn't have the wetlands overlapping it. And then off to the side, this is all a natural protection zone. So if anybody wants to see the map afterwards, you're welcome to come up and take a look.
I believe that's something that you said was online. With
It is online. You can go to tollandct.map.go.io and take a look. But I can send.
Anybody else got any other questions? No? No? Alright. I just wanna, again, just make it perfectly clear, if this goes forward, all of this, again, nothing happens until all of the plans are in place, the property stays in the town's possession, until everything goes through all the different groups and ladders and gets approved. Once we have that actual approval, then it would go through, correct?
Yes, that's my understanding.
And up until then, it's still town-owned property.
Until he has final closing, until final approvals, yeah. And he has until 2023 as well, May 1st.
So I think at this point, if nobody has any other questions, goes to you.
In terms of vote, yes, I would entertain a motion for consideration of a resolution to approve the purchase and sale of the town of Tolland and Stephen D. Williams for the purchase of the parcel described as the River Cross 22-K-020, 9.7 acres more or less, authorizing Michael Rosen, town manager, to sign the purchase and sale agreement.
No, it's second.
Okay, any other discussion?
Should we do a roll call vote, or is this going to be simple voice majority?
It's up to you. Do you guys want to do a roll call vote? Brenda.
I'm sorry, I'm stuck, so.
Yay. Yes.
I abstain, Madam Chair.
I'm gonna say no, because I think we should entertain, looking at the subdivision. So, nay.
4-2-1.
Yep, motion passes. Okay, is this a 10, report of the town manager?
Sure. So we touched on one of the things earlier today about the census. Again, March 12th to 20th, you should, in your postal mail, be receiving a postcard that directs you on how to take the census, either online, by phone, or eventually by in person. There's going to be a clear information on the channel, library appropriation at 7 to 6 p.m. And immediately after that workshop, there's a community emergency response team, CERT, having a graduation ceremony at 7:30 p.m. in the fire training center. I'm hoping to bring that next. But you all are also welcome to the festival. And I would direct you can also consider attending that event as well for a workshop.
Can you, sorry, give me the information again?
Sure. February 27th, which is this Thursday, at 6 p.m. is the foyer in the library, 7:30 is the CERT graduation at the fire training center. Any council is welcome to attend, and indeed, the chief said that any counselors can be on the receiving line to wish our graduates well. So,
Do you think the foyer will be over by then?
I hope so. I think it will be. I heard it's going to be about an hour or so. So whatever time, I'll make my way over afterwards. And then also part of tonight's update is a financial overview for fiscal period ending January 1st, 2020. Lisa alluded to it earlier when she was talking about the fire truck, and she had submitted a memo to you starting on page 40 of tonight's packet that has some very detailed information. We don't have a formal presentation of this, but we just were interested to see if you had any questions on this packet, on this material.
Thank you so much for putting this together. It was very helpful.
Did everybody review it and go over it? So, she's looking right at me.
No, go ahead, please.
Actually, no, this was super useful. I appreciated this a lot. I'd like to see like something like this. This is great. Gives us a good idea, and I understand fully that it's a projection and not, stuff moves and stuff shifts. I did have a question about let's see I'm sorry, I looked at it on my computer and not in here, so give me 1 second. Public Works is estimated to have a shortfall of about 14.5 due to the disposal fees. Are we not seeing anything to kind of offset that with, reduced overtime? We've had like a null event of a winter, and we probably haven't had to order any extra salt or anything.
I think we're gonna have to see how the season ends. At this point, the Public Works Director feels he's going to be using all of his funds. This is what I'm being told. There may or may not be, and we get a few more months after winter's totally complete, then he may have a better feel for, I'm not gonna have to order any more sand or any more salt. And a certain amount of salt and sand we will order because we have to make sure we're set to start the new season. That's how we usually complete, fill it up at the end of the season. So at this time there could possibly be funds, but from what he's telling me is no. That shortfall, we're holding funds in our payroll contingency account because we have had some savings in that area. So right now, some of those are being earmarked in case we need it to cover that shortfall.
I'm just questioning, like I said, I think that might hopefully change, because I can't imagine that we've had hardly any overtime.
Well, he certainly has had some attrition in his department as well, and I know he's had to fill, not only attrition, but he's had some workers' comp situations where he's had to have other people work in place to get the work done. So there's been other things going on in the department as well that may be using some of those funds.
So I just clarify, that was Public Works, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think actually during our site visits, he talked about how he actually had to get in one of the trucks during the night because he didn't have enough people. So I think that would probably be factored into, I know his salary, but that probably factors into that.
And it's worth noting too that one of our earlier storms in the season, I forget if it was December-ish, January, there was a significant ice storm where there was melting and refreezing. So that storm alone, even though it was our only significant really snowfall of the season, did utilize a lot of his snow budget, like somewhere in the 40 or 50% range, she said. So just because it was that drastic of a storm, so just put that out there.
But otherwise, looking at this, if I'm reading this true, we're looking at the possibility of around $500,000, right? So this, again, helps me feel a lot better about the fire truck.
Right, and that includes, a big chunk of that is not only the savings from the police department, where we had the change in the law regarding the fringe benefit costs. That was a big chunk of savings on the expenditure side. But also on the revenue side, we had the extra ECS money that we had to move around, and you did fund some of that into the stabilization fund, into the capital fund. But there's still some money left there from that's going to flow into fund balance, and that's all taken into account in these calculations. I tried to, in my letter, point out that information so it would be understood that we didn't overtax the public. It was just how we had to record things to make it all balanced. The other two items besides the summary was what I alluded to earlier, was regarding the fund balance projections. I have two, one with the yellow, I don't know if yours came through with yellow, but it says $750,000 for fire trucks. So it kind of shows you the impact on the fund balance, whether you did or did not use it based on my projected year-end estimates. That'd be kind of hard to see it that way.
And even with using the fire truck, we're still at about 12%.
12, yeah.
We're still in the comfort range of not having to.
12.81.
And that doesn't account for if we put the $500,000 back in there, right? Does this?
The $500,000.
What we just talked about here, the potential savings that we have right now?
That includes all that.
Oh, it includes that?
Yeah, yep.
So we're still at the 12% then.
So again, that could potentially change if what I'm projecting for year end changes. And I'm hoping we're still gonna be fairly close to what I'm projecting, but I need to move along a little longer.
So if I'm reading this right, Lisa, so that's the plan, if I'm looking at this right, that's the unassigned, unassigned fund balance gap basis based on the end of the year. That line at the end there, the 10 million?
No one below it, unassigned and available fund balance gap basis.
You're 7.9 million.
7.5.
7.9.
7.644.
Right, so that's the one with the fire truck.
Yeah.
Thank you.
7.6 is if the 2021 budget has not been released yet, we're still working on it.
Yep.
I try to put in numbers kind of where things are going, but until we formally release that, this was just to give you some sort of an idea.
No, I appreciate this. I just wanted to know which number we were talking about in the fire truck.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Anybody else have any other questions for Lisa? No? Well, Lisa, again, I appreciate the document, and I'm hoping like we can I like this a lot.
Okay.
This is,
Yeah,
I like this a
Well,
lot.
this also was in response to one of your goals
I
to
know
try
it
to
was.
improve the reporting. And I took a shot at it and thought, well, you know, we could discuss back and forth if there's any kind of tweaking or if you like this format, we can certainly continue to do this.
What do everybody think about the format? I'm a numbers person and a budget person, so this to me was, you know, it was a nice breakdown between the revenue and then the expenditures and to kind of see where things were moving. So, this totally made 100% sense to me, and it was like, to me, it's like a cover letter. It's like a cover letter of your financials for the quarter, so, you know, but I also do this for a living, so I'm really interested in what you guys think. Is this, like, do you like this format?
No, this is good.
Did you like the level of detail that was in here? You know, like I said, I find it very useful to understand the money and where it's moving and what's driving the savings or the cost. And it also gives us something to kind of read and say, well, tell me more about that.
No, definitely, this is that
Sort of a story behind the data kind of narrative to instead.
Some people, it's easier to see this than it is to see the numbers. You know, like looking at the first document in here, like, I love this, but it's all numbers and that makes sense to me. This might not see, like if it,
For me, you know, that kind of format for grid lines and being able to kind of box things out. The open flow format doesn't always
grid
work.
line kind of,
I am.
yeah. Yeah, so I think, again, I don't.
This is all standard budget, the original budget, the variances,
Yeah.
and where you are, so, yeah, no, this is great, Lisa, thank you.
And I like it, and again, like, nobody's looking to hold anybody to the fire on this. This is I know it's a projection, it moves, if something comes up, something happens, we adjust, we move on the fly, and it might change from time to time.
What I try to do is something like this. I try to do it every quarter. The end of September, there's not, it's really difficult to really give you any kind of projections. But usually I kind of give you a quarterly report of some sort after, you know, where we ended for the quarter. I'm not sure it would make a lot of sense unless there was something major that happened, like say the police changed something again and we have a dramatic savings that I know about in August or September. That's something certainly to point out, but most revenues and expenses, unless we don't have enough data to know for sure where we think we're gonna be. So I don't know if an in-depth report at the end of September would be feasible or not.
I think the only thing really we would have, you know, maybe a higher level, like the same sort of thing, but a higher level, just that we're on track. Because I think in July you'd get your first set of tax payments, so you'd have your first half of property tax revenue to say, you know, we're on track for that. But like you said, from an expense perspective, we're only 3 months into the year. So in all actuality, at that point, it would be, we're projecting to be where we are, unless, like you said, we know we've got an opening, or we know like we've got benefit changes. If there's any knowns, I would say that would be valuable to know. Okay. But otherwise, obviously, the first 3 months, I would say something like this in this format, but not as detailed, just higher level. And then the quarters going forward, I think this is a really good format, because again, it has the numbers and it also has the verbiage for people, so they can kind of walk through it and ask questions.
We can do that.
I love that.
Okay. Good.
Anybody else? No? All right, then we're going to go on to 11.
So Madam Chair, I entertain a motion to adopt the minutes as listed out in 11.1, 11.2, and 11.3.
Any discussion? Any changes to the minutes? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Correspondence to council?
Okay. We received a lot of correspondence as usual. Thank you for everybody who takes the time to write in. We received 4 emails from different residents about the Wilbercross parcel. They either had concerns or were asking us not to proceed with the purchase sale. We received an email from a resident about the Commission on Residents with Disabilities, and she gave us a couple good links for some stories to help educate us. We received a number of emails from residents about the Board of Ed budget. Some were in favor of supporting the Board of Ed budget. Others had some specific questions that I believe were answered last night in the meeting. A couple more about Board of Ed. 1, 2. So, and 2 more about the Board of Ed budget. Again, expressing desire to support the budget, but with concerns about the programs and positions that are targeted for cuts or eliminations. And then we received an email today from a resident who wanted to give us information about what the paraprofessionals in our district do every day. So it was a very educational email. And again, we thank everybody who writes in. We appreciate it. All the copies of these letters are going to be in our minutes so everybody can get to see them and make sure that we've read them.
I believe we received one from somebody who,
Did we miss one?
I think so, like,
Yeah.
the one, it was a few days ago though, I think so. It was the one about, a woman wrote in about, us tabling the motion for the thing, and they were in support of selling.
I just missed that one and I apologize.
That one, and there was an email from our lady around who ran Pride in the park.
I did that last time.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't.
That was last time. That's okay because it came in right at the
Came
time.
in right around
Great,
the
sorry.
Yeah, so these emails are only up until 2 o'clock today, so if you sent in something that was after 2 p.m., I was in meetings for the rest of that evening, they will end up showing up on our next meeting.
Okay, that gets us to the chair report. That is me. I don't have a whole lot today. I can't move. There's a Board of Ed meeting tomorrow. My chair hour is March 5th here at Town Hall at 6:30 in the back conference room. And today, Mike and I, we met with the 4-town Regional Economic Development Team. And it looks like they're leaning more toward marketing the 4 towns with like a tourism spin rather than, yeah, but I'm like, kind of like it's not, I don't know how that's gonna help us economically a whole lot, like, but they're looking at like kind of starting the conversations now to focus in a lot on the tourism and the agriculture and stuff like that, so it's very beginning stages, but
Tourism, as I said last time, spend $100, you get $388 in return. That's a good return on investment.
so I'll keep you guys appraised as I find out more, but it was just like a first meeting, but that's where they're kind of heading with it right now. That's all that I have right now. It brings us to communications and petitions from council persons. Does anybody have anything they want to throw out there today?
Thank you for everybody who participated in the Tolland Eagle Freeze.
Oh, I forgot about that, yeah, I was sick.
Yes, the water was very cold.
Yeah.
Gave me an asthma attack. So thankfully I had my
You guys had ice too, right?
We had 45 inches of ice.
Where's John?
And-
Cut up
I'll
ice.
have that next year without that rescue truck.
So I really wanted to be there, but I was literally home on my couch, like dying. I was just, it was not gonna happen.
We had 5 people jump in the lake. 4 of them were elected officials.
Okay.
So I
No
don't know the
kids?
5th. No, the big group that jumped in last year are all college kids this year.
We gotta
So-
get better at getting that in the high school.
Yeah,
the
so,
challenge.
So Mr. Luba won for the best costume, and I was able to raise the most money.
You raised the most money?
She beat me.
She
Yeah.
beat you,
By a lot.
huh?
I probably raised as much as the other 4 combined.
That sounds like a gauntlet
Really?
thrown
They
down.
should
Who
just
got
drop
the
a
best
mic
costume?
You got the best.
You got the best
got the best
costume? You and your Bills?
Well, I had the onesie, then I had the scuba outfit for underneath when we went into the water.
So you blended with John's guys?
Yeah. They were actually saying that if I had gone underwater, they were gonna pull me up, so.
Awesome.
And then we have Mr. Holt here as well, who's participating.
Oh, yes, that's right, I didn't see.
How are those
Apologize.
overalls?
They're still in the track.
They must have been heavy.
Oh, incredibly cool.
Yes.
Oh, yes, and I actually wanted to point out, I'm sorry, that I did not ask you, Tony, if I missed anything from the Board of Ed.
You did not, Patrick.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I forgot totally. But yeah, I did see all the pictures of everybody, but
And the fire department was able to use that for a training for their dive.
Yeah, it worked
And we
out
also
great.
had CERT there. Am I missing anybody for training?
No, a lot of us were at that funeral, but no, it worked out great. It's a great opportunity for the community. Absolutely great.
yeah.
And I'd like to express our condolences to the Tolland Fire Department for losing a previous member.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Yes.
So my other thing I forgot to mention is sustainable CT. I went to some equity training, and it was about race equity. It was very interesting, and I was sitting next to someone from the DEEP, and she told me, this is something to watch in the next 2 years, our recycling, you know how we had been losing revenue? She's foreseeing that's going to turn back into a revenue stream.
Really?
We might need to make some changes. She gave me her card, so I guess I will pass that information on to you. And I'll do the introduction, all that stuff. And we can take a look on, trying to make sure that we're ahead of the curve. So if any changes need to be made, that this can be a revenue for us again.
That would be nice.
So going to these sustainable CT trainings can help in other ways.
Anybody else? Any petitions?
One thing is also, again, thanking Chief Littell and the entire group out there that was out there for the Eagle Freeze. It was great to see you all out there, and truly appreciate you watching out for all of us.
Laughing at you.
Yes.
Laughing.
Laughing at you guys.
Well,
See, Kelly's laughing in the back.
Come flopping out with my fins on, and some of the guys were laughing, but it was all good. Also, I know that this is something that I meant to say when we still had Mr. Byam and the entire group here before they left. That just want to clear that so everyone that's out there understands that this was a decision that none of us took lightly. That we had an opportunity to review all of the emails. A person responded to several of them. That we all took this very seriously, and it was not an easy decision to make by any means. Each of us, I believe, voted our conscience on it, and that but it's something that I just want to make sure that everybody understands that the decision regarding the purchase and sale agreement was a very difficult one, and not that any of us, I believe, and I don't mean to speak for everybody here, but I believe I can say that none of us took lightly, and all of us took very serious consideration and a lot of research before we made our decisions. So that's all I have.
Yeah, I would echo those statements, even though I voted no. I think if I had been on the council at the time that it was done, I probably would have been voting in the affirmative. If we had rescinded it and gone through the process again and gone through negotiations, I may have voted yes. I think the intent is very strongly needed and strongly there, but just in the moment, I felt the abutters were not given adequate time. I just didn't feel like they got the appropriate amount of ability to convey themselves and convey the interest as well as participate in the prior year's involvement. So, and then the only other thing, so a little bit lighter, on the other lighter side is that I've had a few residents reach out to me, and I do it every year personally, so I wanted to consider the idea of discussing a town-wide cleanup day out at or around Earth Day, just to try, because I grew up on Reed Road, and when you look out the highway, they frequently take that way for avoiding the Tolland Triangle, as it's called. And every year, my father and I, after the first thaw, maybe mid-April, we go out there and find probably 40 or 50 nip bottles, 10 cans, all sorts of trash, frisbees, lost toys, and I saw a post on social media recently that someone went along their neighborhood and saw just all these various alcoholic bottles and just various trash. So I think it'd be a good idea.
Concerns me, like people are driving around whipping out alcohol bottles,
And it's also an environmental concern for the waterways as well as the general wildlife and children and people that are using the streets and roadways for either bicycling or walking or jogging. So that's just a proposal. I don't know if it would be feasible this year, but perhaps for next year. I know it's coming April 22nd, so it will be well after or a little bit after our budget process, but
I don't know if we have time to do
yeah,
anything. I don't know.
logistically speaking.
Last year, Tolland Cares did a big cleanup day. They had like 200 people that did it and I don't remember exactly when it was, if it was in April or not. I haven't heard anything definite that they're doing it yet.
The Earth Day itself falls on a Wednesday, so I doubt that we would make that a day for the community involved. It'd have to be the weekend before or after, I would assume, but
Is our town council meeting the Tuesday before that? or is it,
First of May.
it's the
Second
second
towards
towards, yeah. so-
April kind of goes a little weird, we get a leap year.
Yeah, April is weird because of the, so
So
we
we
do
have the
have a,
14th and the 28th.
right, we have an April 20th. What if, could we make a proclamation for Earth Day just to recognize it this year and that be the stepping stone to maybe next year?
Wait,
Jason,
hold on.
come on.
We have the 14th and the 28th for town council.
So, yeah, the 14th.
The 14th and the 28th, so we're like,
Budget schedule, please,
Got it. Sorry,
This is
14th and
the, here's the town
28th.
council.
so Earth Day is the 22nd. So we could, maybe, we could say, definitely mention something on the 14th. but-
Right, because I mean, we haven't, I've been attending town council meetings for like 12 years. It's been a long time since we've done like a proclamation for a specific day. Once, about 9 years ago, we did one for the notables. We did like a notables day. Making a proclamation and just saying a day is, Earth Day, and we hope the residents recognize the importance and stuff. It doesn't cost us anything, and it just brings awareness maybe to help curb some of these.
And perhaps encourage maybe the weekend following that, for people to consider as they're traveling about the town to be mindful of the trash, and if they're willing to volunteer time to clean up and work in teams. I don't know. I don't want to get too into the weeds of organizing stuff or any public works or the PCC doing anything.
I was just thinking like PCC, I think is like, it's a celebration thing. I was just literally thinking about that. We said that I don't know that it would go through PCC or if this would have to be something that we would have to coordinate through a.
And most likely, I think the Public Works, because even Conservation Commission, they pretty much focus on their trails and the lands that they own. And thankfully, that's an area where there's very little littering that occurs, very minimal. But
Maybe like a combined thing with Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, any kind of organizations or anything like that.
Yeah.
Or we could try to plan something bigger for next year to kind of pull a weekend day together.
Maybe if organizations are planning stuff for April, they can let us know, and then during your chairperson's report, you can highlight them at the beginning of April.
Yeah.
And then this way we're recognizing the month and the contributions that our civic organizations, et cetera, make to our community.
So. See if it's request and information from the organizations doing it into a Earth Day.
We could probably highlight what the schools are doing too, because I'm sure at least some of the schools are doing something.
Schools, Boy Scouts.
the library may put up materials regarding Earth Day or environmental causes and environmental documentaries and books as well about kind of a cleaner planet and a cleaner community.
And just while you're typing all that up, for those of you who are thinking of throwing stuff out of your window, take a drive through a gas station. They have garbage right there. Some of the parks have garbage right in the parking lots, some of the receptacles. So I know like a teenager's not going to be thinking about that, but while you're filling up with gas, please try. I know that all the teenagers out there are watching this right now. Yeah. So, but
it's the hot
We have to do
Tuesday
a
night.
report on it tomorrow
Right.
night.
Tuesday night viewing.
So I think that they. Never mind.
All right. Anything else for anybody? Good. All right. So we're gonna go to public listed participation. Any subject in the jurisdiction of the town council with 3-minute limit.
George, you kick it off.
If you just knew I was gonna do it. George, George Fishing Game Road. Couple
She's
of
not
points.
calling you, George. You can speak closer to the mic. I think
I
Lisa
thought it
mentioned
wasn't
that there's some
working.
issues with
It
the
is
audio
working now?
picking up, so.
It's not great.
I can talk louder. Two issues. One is, three. One is I don't like to pay taxes, but I do. I don't like to waste my taxes. That's the problem. So, on the first issue is the fire rescue truck. I understand that and we need it. I've donated to the fire department for years as much as I can. As far as I've needed the fire department and I've needed the rescue, they've both been there. I was amazed how quick they got there, that they were there for me. So we need that. My concern is with this, is we keep tick-tocking away and prices keep going up, and that's what bothers me. We need to get off the dime on the fire truck. So now, I don't like to pay the interest, but if we can go this way, fine. My concern is if we go this way and have another public meeting, does that rescind the bond? And then all of a sudden, now we have to go out for a bond again because somebody voted against this? We have to go forward on that and stop diddling around because everything's costing more. Okay, my other one was on a parcel of land. The way I understand it, the state says that we have to use it for commercial use or do nothing with it. The town's dying, our money's going down. We need money, we need development. The way I understand it, Mr. Williams is the only one that has the access to the land as far as commercial use. So whether we like it or not, it's either him or nothing. All we can do is watch what he's doing and make sure he does the land back in berms, whatever he needs for noise, trees, planting, whatever he needs to do. But we need to get off the dime and get some revenue into this town. And to me, that everybody knows nobody wants it in their backyard. But if we buffer for it properly, it should be fine. I know all about noise and different things. I live across the street from the gun nuts. And that doesn't bother me because at night they all go home and it's very quiet. So I like them as neighbors. So I just live with them. So it's fine. So we just gotta get off the dime and let's move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, George.
I can sympathize with you, George. Growing on Reed Road, there's certain times of the year it just is nonstop. Working out homework, it wasn't too much of a distraction, but yeah, I got used to it. You got used after a while.
I belong to that
50
club
feet away
there,
from
George.
Yeah.
You don't even hear it after a while.
It's the sound of freedom.
Anyone else?
No? All right. With that,
Make a motion to adjourn at 9:05 p.m.
any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstained? Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you for coming.